YouTube vinyl community, Paul McCartney fans, random people on the internet, my name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about my new haircut, but more importantly, Paul McCartney's 1984 album, Give My Regards to Broad Street, released on Columbia Records, his last record released with Columbia Records of that early 80s period when he was with them. This album for me has been a part of my life since I was a little kid. I remember being in a antique store in Vermont with my family, and my brother found this album and picked it up, and we just fell in love with it. Then we started seeing the movie on TV a lot when we were kids. So it was one of those things, like, for me, this album is definitely a nostalgia trip, but it's also, I think, got some interesting songs on it. It's definitely not his best work ever by far, but I feel like it deserves its own little review here, because there are a couple of tracks on here and a couple of moments where I feel like we get a little glimpse of what could have been for a different sort of Broad Street. If you don't know, Give My Regards to Broad Street was Paul's movie from the early 80s where he thought, let's make a movie. And after having canceled some other scripts that were made by other people, he wrote the script himself. And it's basically the story of Paul making an album and the tapes go missing and they look for the tapes. And that's it. And then they find them. Spoiler alert. And during all that, some songs happen. So for this album, there's only like 3 actually new songs on this thing. The rest of it is all Beatles tracks, Wings songs, other McCartney songs from 2 years ago before this, redone for the movie. So the cool thing about it, there's some humongous names on here. Everybody from Ringo to Dave Gilmour, John Paul Jones, you name it. There's a lot of people on here. So it's kind of a fun listen in that respect, but overall, I mean, the standouts on here are Giant Stand-House. The weak tracks are kind of weak. But the album itself did better than the movie, I guess. Looking at reviews for this thing, the people panned the movie when it came out. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, it's a little kind of but it's fun to see Paul and Ringo together. Like, for me, that's cool. I'll watch it. I mean, the album it was like his worst selling album in the US at that point. He number 21, which was a very low showing for Paul. In the UK, it was number 1, because it's the UK. But No More Lonely Nights was a top 10 hit on this thing, which is a fantastic song and easily one of my favorite Paul songs ever. I've always loved this track. And that's just where we're going to start, because it's the first song on the album. It opens this thing up. The dynamics on this song are fascinating, because you get a glimpse of Paul playing with negative emotions, or playing with not just fluff. And that's when he works his best. I think when he tries to... That was a great thing about the Lennon-McCartney relationship. They'd play off each other's emotions and feelings and what they brought to the table, which is what made their songwriting partnership so fascinating and so interesting to listen to. And when you hear their solo stuff, there's definitely a split between what you were expecting to hear from a Beatles track, but now with a solo track. He got close again in the late 80s with Elvis Costello, but that's a whole different thing. Anyway, to hear him play with, like, maybe not so happy time in his life, those emotions, he just flies with that kind of thing. Chaos and Creation in the Backyard is a fantastic example of that. It's one of his best albums. And to hear him go down the rabbit hole of life isn't so cool right now sounds amazing, because he could pull that off really well. And that's the case with this track here. Even though it is a love song, it's basically saying, hey, look, no matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets, I'm always going to be around unless you tell me to go away, that kind of thing. But the song has so many nice shifts from really pleasant, sweet vocal melodies to nice piano bits to really rocking out with Dave Gilmour just ripping through a solo at the end, some good heavy drums, enough twists and turns to keep your interest going. But it has all the elements of a great track. I mean, a super catchy chorus that, I mean, if that chorus doesn't get in your brain, try again, man, because it's a great song. Easily one of my favorites, but I love his piano playing on this thing. It's really inspired, and it's full of emotion. It's an excellent track, excellent way to start the album off. And you know what? While I'm at it, let me just show you some gear that I've got here. This is a 12-inch version of the No More Lonely Nights single, which has the extended version, and then the play out one, as they call it. And then side two's got Silly Love Songs and No More Lonely Nights, the ballad version. But I thought that was pretty cool. And then I've got the smaller actual 45. And this is the play-out version and the ballad. Oh wait, this one's extended version. And then it's got the ballad. Extended might be... It's been a long time since I should have played that thing. But nice picture of Paul on a bench in the back. And you got the old Columbia label there. So that's very cool. So that knocks off those guys. Anyways, after that you get on to Good Day Sunshine, and this is where the album starts to take a turn for the basically it becomes Revolver Part 2, because he just does a bunch of Revolver tracks on this album. Completely, almost note for note. One thing I will make a mention of, and starting with this song, this is a shorter version of the actual track. On the cassette tape and on the CD version, you get longer versions of all the songs, almost all the songs. This happens to be a chrome tape. Remember those? So it sounds pretty good, but this has, I think this has a longer version of all the songs on it. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I was just playing this again last night. It's been a while since I've played that tape. Anyways, this version of Good Day Sunshine is much shorter, so it's about 1.5 minutes, but the long version on the CD or on Spotify or whatever does have the whole thing right down, like, note for note, even to the part where Paul imitates John's voice going, she's looking, you know she does, or she's looking good, or whatever that line is in the background when you hear it a little muffled. He does that too. Yesterday, same kind of thing. It's pretty spot on. I like the brass additions to this thing. I think that's kind of a fun change. And then you get Here, There, and Everywhere, same thing, brass additions. Kind of interesting to hear Paul do a solo vocal on it, but instead of the Beatles doing their harmony, it works out pretty well with Paul solo. But all that leads up to Wanderlust, which is a fantastic song, one of my favorites of the early 80s that he did. Having just recently put the song out 2 years before on Tug of War, this version's a little bit different, a little more straightforward than drums, but with a really nice, kind of bombastic ending that really, I think, benefits the song itself. So this is the version I grew up with until I heard the Tug of War version, and I was like, oh, I was a little let down by that presentation, but I still love that version. I've come to appreciate it way more over the years. But this version always has stuck in my head. I love the ending to it a lot. Ballroom dancing, same kind of thing. You know, it's a song we've heard, a song we've had for a couple of years now. At that time with Tug of War. Great song, I love the feeling of it, and it lends itself well to the movie. I mean, it's definitely one of those songs where you can build up this imagery of what's happening in the film, with a big ballroom scene. You get a big dance break with a couple of good chunky guitar riffs, Ringo's on drums, slapping away in the back. And then side one on the record anyway ends with Silly Love Songs, which is just an 80s version with 80s production and 80s drums and a crazy bass solo, not played by Paul. Not too bad. I do like some of the breaks that they do to kind of change up the track itself. That's kind of fun. Side 2 opens up with a small reprise of Silly Love Songs, and then you get the next two songs, which are the next two original tracks on here, Not Such a Bad Boy and No Values. Not Such a Bad Boy is a track that caught me off guard, re-listening to this thing again, because it's been a long time since I've heard it, but having heard his early 80s, late 70s stuff, to hear him rocking out like this again was kind of a surprise, because like a lot of his music at this point was really soft, kind of adult contemporary stuff, kind of just chill guy in his early 40s, got a family, rich, making some just nice music, nothing wrong with that. But hearing him do this, it's almost a bit of a Ram vocal here with him just kind of wailing away. It sounds awesome. Ringo's on drums again for the next two tracks, this one and No Values. But this is interesting because there's a line in here, and I'm gonna take out the words here so I can read it off to you. I talked to my lawyer, he picked up my bail. Won't someone get me out of this lousy jail? We're both in agreement that crime never pays, and I should be out in a couple of days. That has to be about his arrest in 1980 for getting busted for weed. I mean, that has to be. Like, what else could it possibly be about? So it's kind of interesting to see Paul get a little, like, not just sing-songy, like, oh, here's something that actually happened to him. Very interesting. Same with No Values. This is a song that totally is very un-Paul McCartney. This sounds like a John Lennon song, and in fact, this song came to him in a dream. He thought it was a Rolling Stones song, and he woke up and he was like, oh, that's a good Rolling Stones song. Oh wait, they don't have a song called No Values, I'll write it. and so he did. But there's a line on this one too, the last verse, which I think is fantastic. The whole song itself is basically just saying like, it's basically check yourself before you wreck yourself. It's like a song about keeping yourself in check, aware of your surroundings. You know, don't just sell out the whole time. You know, keep yourself in line. But this last paragraph here, into the strongest tide. Where is it? On the darkest of nights, we were two of a kind. We went through it all before the tide went out and left us stranded on the shore. How was I to know? How was I to know? Fantastic line. There's so much that could be said about what he's talking about, or whatever you can interpret from it, but it's not just light, fluffy stuff. It's, you know, there's some substance there, some dynamics, there's some context, which is fascinating to hear him go down that rabbit hole. It's who knows what could have been if he had a whole new album of all new songs that were in this vein. Could have been a whole different project. But anyways, I digress. I like the guitars on that song. I really like the drums from Ringo as well. Yeah, much needed edge on this album for sure. And there's a bit of a jam at the end, kind of an eerie, creepy jam that he cuts off, which sucks because who knows where it could have gone. It sounded really cool. You get a bit of No More Lonely Nights as a bit of a reprise, and then For No One comes back. Spot on again. His voice pretty much sounds like 1966 here. There's not much of a difference. But again, even the horn solo is note for note. It's almost like, I know he hadn't sung these songs since he recorded them almost 20 years earlier. But can't you just like play them in your room to yourself or something? I don't know why he needed to record them, but he did. Eleanor Rigby and Eleanor's Dream, same kind of deal. Eleanor's Dream is basically using chords and melodies from Eleanor Rigby, but to kind of change them around and make them into the dream sequence in the movie. The Long and Winding Road, this version really doesn't do anything for me. This is kind of a cheesy version of it. Although he does some of the live Wings-esque stuff where he says, "Don't keep me waiting," you know, in the background. That's kind of cool. And then the play-out version of No More Lonely Nights is kind of fun. That was done for the ending credits in the movie itself. So it's a really long, dancey version of it. Kind of an upbeat, if you will, version. So this is a promo copy, by the way. It's got a gold stamp promo there. And then this must have been for like a radio station. Someone wrote movie soundtrack 1984 on the tapes. That's where the tapes went. But some nice pictures on the inside from the movie. And a nice note on the back here. It says, "This record is longer than usual, but due to the available playing time on a vinyl disc, some editing of the soundtrack has been necessary in order to retain full volume and dynamic range. Even longer versions exist on cassette and compact disc." And that's true, and there's more songs on both. On the CD version, there's a song called, I'm spacing on it, Princess Dreams or something. It's a very last track. It's a 40s-esque song. And Paul only does a spoken word thing. He doesn't play on the song itself. But yeah, the cassette tape here, let's see what else it added on to. Basically longer versions of Eleanor's Dream, like a full version of it. It's sort of the minute version that's on this one. Full versions of Here, There, and Everywhere, Good Day Sunshine, Corridor Music, which is basically just Ringo saying, "Well, we don't trust him." But there's a chrome tape. Sorry for my giant fingers there. And this is a slick that was used in a promo display. Just the album cover, it's white back, but album slick, which is pretty cool. And the last thing I wanted to show, just because we're on the topic of the end of 1984 here. This came out in October of 84. In November of 84, you got this. We All Stand Together. Paul McCartney and the Frog Chorus. So, bit of a cool shaped record there. Let me take it out. There you go. Paul and Rupert the Bear. So, that was actually a really big song for him. I think it went to like number 3 or something, and it recharted again in early 85 or mid 85. So that had a bit of a life on its own too. That may have been more successful than the entire Give My Regards to Broad Street project. May have been. Anyways, to sum it up, I mean, I don't hate this album, and I know a lot of it for me is nostalgic, but it's not bad. I mean, if this is your introduction to Paul McCartney, it might be okay. I mean, you're getting some like Beatles tracks and Wings stuff, some solo McCartney. It's basically Paul kind of going through his greatest hits and coming up with a project. Who knows what it could have been like if every song on here was new and in the same caliber of Not Such a Bad Boy, No Values, and No More Lonely Nights. We could have had a whole different project on our hands here, but for what it is and for what they were trying to accomplish, I get it. It works. And I mean, they pulled it off well. It's a well done album. It sounds good. Like the production on it sounds really good. Not my favorite by far, but personally, it's a favorite for just nostalgia purposes. It reminds me of being a kid, playing this thing and watching the movie over and over again. So there's that. I think that's it. My name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews with Macca, Paul McCartney. Give my regards to Broad Street, 1984. I'm going to give this thing like a 7 out of 10 because the 3 original songs are what make it. If anything else, if you avoid the rehash of old work, just check out No More Lonely Nights, Not Such a Bad Boy, and No Values. No Values, No More Lonely Nights, Not Such a Bad... They all start with no or not. Huh. Would you look at that? Would you look at my haircut? Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, and that's it. Bye-bye.